Welcome to 2016 World History 2 SOL review video. This video will cover world history from 1500 to present. There are many states and empires you need to know, such as Aztec, Inca, Spain, France, England, Songhai, Ottoman, Persia, Mughal, China, and Russia. The Aztecs, Incas, and Mayans were part of the Spanish Empire. This was the empire at its height. The Chinese established foreign enclaves to control trade. An enclave is a portion of territory within a larger territory whose people are culturally distinct. The Ottomans were successful in creating a large empire because they used the Islam religion as a unifying force. The city of Constantinople was renamed Istanbul to establish the capital of the Ottoman Empire. In the 1500s, Japan's emperors were considered very weak. Here's a picture of one of the emperors. The Mughals ruled the area that today is known as India. The 5 world religions you need to know are Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. This is where they were located in 1500. Judaism and Christianity were located in Europe. Islam was located in North Africa and the Middle East. Hinduism was located in India. And Buddhism was located in China and Southeast Asia. The Renaissance started in Italy and moved to Northern Europe. Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are associated with the Italian Renaissance. The humanities, or study of history, grammar, rhetoric, and poetry, focus on classic Greek and Roman texts. Michelangelo's is most associated with this time period that was considered a rebirth of knowledge, when new forms of literature and art flourished, and it symbolized the birth of the modern world. Shakespeare had many new writings, including sonnets, plays, and essays. Erasmus accomplished many intellectual ideas today known as humanism. The Renaissance started in Italy and moved to Europe. Da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa and Last Supper. Michelangelo, Sistine Chapel, Pieta, and David. Shakespeare and Erasmus. Trade was very important. Europe gained knowledge of astronomy, medicine, and math because of trade with Asia. The trans-Saharan routes across Africa are historically significant because they made possible an exchange of goods and ideas. Common trade goods that traveled west on the Silk Road were the compass, silk, porcelain, and paper. The trade routes from Mexico to the Philippines were most likely used to export silver. In the 18th century, most trade routes gave Northern Europe access to goods from the Ottoman Empire across the Black Sea. This is the trans-Saharan trade route across Africa and the Silk Road going from China west to Europe. The Reformation occurred because of corruption in the Catholic Church. They believed the Catholic Church was corrupt by its political power and wealth. New religions that rejected the authority of the Pope were established. Martin Luther believed in salvation by faith only. He hung the 95 Theses on the church door. John Calvin believed in predestination. All of these events occurred in Germany: invention of the printing press, Martin Luther, the 30 Years' War, and music composed by Bach. King Henry VIII became the supreme head of the Church of England, or Anglican Church, because he wanted a divorce and the Catholic Church would not allow him to have one. Queen Elizabeth I supported Protestantism by making the Anglican Church the official Church of England. When the Edict of Nantes was revoked, the Protestants living in France were the most affected. This is Martin Luther hanging the 95 Theses on the church door. This is John Calvin, who believed in predestination, that if you were going to heaven or hell, it was determined when you were born. King Henry VIII wanted a divorce, so he formed his own church. Queen Elizabeth I made the Anglican Church the official Church of England and also beat the Spanish Armada. Many Catholics did not like the Protestant Reformation, so they created a Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, to spread the Catholic teachings. The Council of Trent reaffirmed most church doctrine and practice. The Inquisition was used to reinforce Catholic doctrine. These are the Jesuits, the Catholic missionaries. And this is a picture of the Council of Trent. Due to the Reformation, we'll see a growth of secularism and individualism, more religious tolerance. The Gutenberg printing press led to a growth of literacy. They could print more books, which spread ideas of the Reformation and the Renaissance. Remember that secularism means not religious. This is a picture of the Gutenberg printing press that had movable type. Age of Discovery. Vasco da Gama contributed to the establishment of Portuguese colonies because he sailed around Africa to India. Europeans acquired ideas from Islam, which led to the improvement of European navigational skills and allowed them to explore. Prince Henry the Navigator opened a school for navigation. He did not actually sail himself, he only opened a school for navigation. This is the voyage of Francis Drake, the first Englishman to sail around the world. The voyage of Pizarro, who conquered the Incas in Peru. The voyage of Jacques Cartier, who discovered Canada for France. This is Cortez, who sailed to Mexico and destroyed the Aztec Empire. Christopher Columbus made many voyages to the Caribbean. He died thinking that he made it to Asia. Da Gama sailed around Africa to India. And Magellan was the first person to ever sail around the world, although he died when he was in the Philippines. The Columbian Exchange brought horses from Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere, and it is best explained as an exchange of agricultural goods between Europe and the Americas. This diagram shows you the exchange of goods between the Eastern and the Western Hemisphere. Triangular trade. The Songhai Empire was most negatively affected by this age of exploration because of the exportation of slaves. You'll see the slaves that are removed from Africa due to the Middle Passage. And triangular trade connected three areas: Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Latin America is most associated with the destruction of the indigenous empires by Spanish explorers during the Age of Discovery. Spain's economy greatly benefited from the mining of gold and silver in the Americas. Many churches were built throughout the Spanish Empire to convert people to Christianity. Mexico and Peru have a large Catholic population. Mercantilism. During the 1600s and 1700s, this policy led to increased competition for markets. It is described as gold and silver that represent the wealth of a nation. A nation needs a positive balance of trade. European colonialism should be expanded, and the government controls the economy through the use of tariffs. A tariff is a tax on imports. This is an excellent diagram that explains the idea of mercantilism. Take a second and study it. In the scientific revolution, there were many inventions. William Harvey discovered the circulatory system, Copernicus the heliocentric theory, Kepler the planetary motion, Galileo the use of the telescope to support the heliocentric theory, Newton and his laws of gravity. They all emphasized reason and systematic observation of nature and formulated the scientific method. This is a picture of William Harvey discovering that the heart helped with the circulation of blood. Other inventions were Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton. Absolute monarchs included Peter the Great and King Louis XIV. Peter the Great supported westernization in Russia by establishing a new capital, increasing their power, and adapting new technology. King Louis XIV required all nobles to spend part of each year living in the Versailles Palace to maintain control. They used the concept of divine right that God gave them power to rule. This is a picture of Peter the Great, who wanted to westernize Russia. King Louis XIV built the beautiful Palace of Versailles and was nicknamed the Sun King. The Glorious Revolution took place in 17th century England and led to the strengthening of Parliament, which led to the English Bill of Rights. It started when William and Mary took over and established a constitutional monarchy. They signed the English Bill of Rights, which said the king could not raise taxes or raise an army without the consent of Parliament. The Enlightenment was when the novel emerged as a distinct form of literature. Major ideas of John Locke included the right to live, the right to be free, and the right to own property. Hobbes believed that the state must have absolute power. Montesquieu's spirit of laws emphasized the importance of separation of powers. Voltaire believed in separation of church and state. This is Locke, who believed in life, liberty, and property. He wrote 2 treatises on government. Thomas Hobbes wrote Leviathan. Montesquieu wrote The Spirit of Laws, believing in the separation of powers in the government. Bach was a Baroque composer, Mozart a classical composer, Cervantes a novelist who wrote Don Quixote, and Eugene Delacroix a painter who painted Liberty Leading the People. During the French Revolution, Maximilien Robespierre led a time of mass executions in France known as the Reign of Terror. As a result of the revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte became the ruler of France. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, an Enlightenment writer, most influenced the people who started the French Revolution. The Reign of Terror was when they used the guillotine to kill people, and the event that started the French Revolution was the storming of the Bastille, a prison in Paris. This is a picture of Robespierre and the guillotine. A picture of Napoleon Bonaparte, who will take over at the end of the French Revolution. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the writer of The Social Contract, who influenced a lot of the people's beliefs. The Latin American revolutions were influenced by the American Revolution. Lima, Peru became an important outpost because it attracted Spanish colonists. South American society had mestizos on the bottom rung, people of European heritage born in South America in the middle, the peninsulas, and officers at the top. After the Spanish conquest in Latin America, the social system was a rigid class system based on ethnic background. In this diagram, you will see the very rigid class structure. There are 3 revolutions you need to know about. The Mexican state of Hidalgo, the district of Miguel Hidalgo in Mexico City, and Hidalgo County in New Mexico were named after the man who started the movement for Mexican independence, Father Miguel Hidalgo. The independence movements in Spanish and Portuguese colonies in the early 19th century were inspired by the American Revolution. In 1790 in South America, many revolutions took place led by Simón Bolívar. Toussaint Louverture led the Haitian Rebellion. This is Father Miguel Hidalgo, who led the Mexican independence movement. Simón Bolívar, who established the countries of Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, and Bolivia. And Toussaint Louverture, a former slave who freed Haiti from France. The Monroe Doctrine was issued by U.S. President James Monroe, which protected Latin America from outside influence, specifically from Europe. This cartoon shows Uncle Sam standing on the Western Hemisphere, protecting it from Europe. The Congress of Vienna tried to put Europe back together after Napoleon's unsuccessful attempt to unify Europe under French rule. One thing that was great about Napoleon is that he did create a Napoleonic Code. The Congress of Vienna wanted to return a balance of power to Europe. They also wanted to restore monarchs and have a return to conservatism, more like absolute monarchs. They were against the idea of liberalism. This is a picture of the meeting of the Congress of Vienna. There were many revolutions in 1848 that were unsuccessful. They were directed against European monarchies. It occurred in many countries, including France, Germany, Italy, and the Austrian Empire. and resulted in a military oppression and failure contributed to the spread of nationalism. Here's a map showing you where they occurred, and a cartoon illustrating nationalism, or extreme pride and love of one's country. Italy and Germany were some of the last countries to be unified in Europe. Giuseppe Garibaldi was important because he conquered southern Italy to unite it with northern Italy. Piazza Cavour in Italy is named after the noble who unified the states of northern Italy. Here's a picture of Giuseppe Garibaldi, who unified southern Italy to the rest of Italy. The Papal States were the last part to unify with the rest of Italy. And Count Cavour, who unified northern Italy to the rest of Italy. Otto von Bismarck led Prussia in the unification of Germany. His actions were seen as an example of realpolitik, which justifies all means to achieve and hold power. The Franco-Prussian War led to the creation of the German state, and this is a picture of Otto von Bismarck. The Industrial Revolution created many inventions and urbanization. It started in England because of plentiful natural resources, a stable government, overseas markets, and technological advances. Edward Jenner invented the smallpox vaccine. The British enclosure movement forced farmers to move to cities. Hargreaves invented the spinning jenny. Watt, the steam engine. Whitney, the cotton gin, which increased U.S. dependence on slaves. Bessemer, a process for making steel. And Pasteur discovered bacteria, which made milk safe to drink. Karl Marx, who wrote Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, believed that government should not interfere with a free market economy. He believed in principles of communism, which include no private property, equal distribution of wealth, and rule of the working class. This is a picture of the books he wrote, Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. This is a very good graphic that explains the differences between capitalism, socialism, and communism. Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. He emphasized the role of market economy and entrepreneurial abilities. He is known as the father of capitalism. Here's a picture of Adam Smith and his book, The Wealth of Nations. The development of the factory system led to an increase in the use of child labor. An effect of the Industrial Revolution on families was that the family-based cottage industries were weakened. Cottage industries were when people made their products in their homes, just like this picture shows. Instead, they are now being replaced by factories. Imperialism. Industrialization led to the European colonization of Africa by increasing competition for overseas markets. Africa's main exports were raw materials. The Sepoy Rebellion, the Mandi Rebellion, and the Boxer Rebellion were all responses to European imperialism. A response to growing European influence in China was the Boxer Rebellion. This cartoon shows an octopus showing a European country with his hands all over the place, illustrating imperialism. This is a map and picture of the Sepoy Rebellion in India, and a picture of the Boxer Rebellion that occurred in China. Again, these rebellions were against foreign influence. World War I had many causes. We can summarize them with the word mine, M, militarism, I, imperialism, N, nationalism, E, entangling alliances. The spark was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. The U.S. was led by Wilson, Germany, Wilhelm II. The U.S. got involved in the war because of the Zimmermann telegram, a German offer to Mexico to form an alliance against the U.S. This map shows the land that the U.S. would give up if Germany won World War I. Major events. World War I began, then thousands of men from European colonies fought for the colonial powers. Then World War I ended, and finally European colonies organized independence movements. The Treaty of Versailles ended World War I. The Mandate system was intended to prepare territories for future independence. The Allied victory led to Alsace-Lorraine being returned and other lands being returned, and reparations being paid by Germany. The Treaty of Versailles stated that Germany had to give up all of its rights and titles over her colonies. It also created a League of Nations, which the U.S. never joined. This is a map of the mandate system. The mandates were Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and Lebanon. This is a map of the Allies versus the Central Powers. The Allies won. The war ended in 1918. Russian troops withdrew from World War I because communists overthrew their government. Why? They lost to Japan in a humiliating defeat in 1905. Their leader was incompetent. His name was Tsar Nicholas II, and there were many military defeats and high casualties in World War I. Vladimir Lenin had a new economic policy. Joseph Stalin will take over and had a 5-year plan which killed many, many people. The interwar period had a lot of problems. The League of Nations failed because it didn't have power to enforce its decisions, especially because the United States was not a member of the League of Nations. The world also suffered through the Great Depression that occurred in the 1930s because the stock market crashed in 1929. It led to high unemployment, bank failures, collapse of prices, and growth of the Nazi Party. Also between the wars was the rise of dictators. Benito Mussolini took over Italy and introduced fascism. He attempted to restore Italy to its past glory and invaded Ethiopia. Militarism in Germany had the most influence on the outbreak of World War II. In 1928, Stalin announced that the Soviet Union would start its first 5-year plan to boost its economy. In this picture, you'll see Benito Mussolini, who wanted to restore the glorious power of Rome. Joseph Stalin used 5-year plans to increase the power of the Soviet Union. In 1939, World War II breaks out. Stalin takes over the Soviet Union. He collectivizes the farms, has secret police, and the Great Purge. Hitler is anti-Semitic, a Nazi, and occupied nearby countries. Mussolini led to the rise of fascism in Italy, restored the glory of Rome, invaded Ethiopia. Hirohito and Tojo led Japan. The rest of the world stood by and did nothing. This is known as appeasement. The Nazis used bomber raids in the Battle of Britain. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, starting the war. In 1940, France fell, and the Battle of Britain occurred. In 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, which pulled the U.S. into the war. D-Day was the Allied invasion of Europe, and the atomic bombs that dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan will officially end World War II in 1945. This is a picture of the Battle of Britain. The Allied leaders in World War II were FDR and Harry Truman for the U.S. Dwight Eisenhower was the Allied commander in Europe, Douglas MacArthur, a U.S. general, George Marshall, a U.S. general, and Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister. Genocide occurs when there is a rise of nationalism that leads to a belief in a master race, which leads to the development of a final solution. In the case of World War II, it was called the Holocaust. Genocide is defined as a systematic destruction of a racial, political, religious, or cultural group. This is a picture of Holocaust victims in World War II. There are many other examples of genocide, such as Armenians being killed by leaders of the Ottoman Empire, peasants, government and military leaders, and members of the elite in the Soviet Union killed by Joseph Stalin. The educated, artists, technicians, former government officials, monks and minorities by Pol Pot in Cambodia, and the Tutsi minority by the Hutu in Rwanda. After World War II, there were war crime trials in Nuremberg, Germany. They were held to punish war criminals involved in the Holocaust. Other outcomes of World War II include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights issued in 1948 by the UN to protect the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. The UN was established Germany was divided into East and West, and Japan was reconstructed under MacArthur's administration. After World War II, the U.S. guaranteed security and assisted development in Japan. Japan adopted a democratic constitution and disbanded their military. This is a picture of the U.S. trying to help reconstruct Japan. The Cold War. It was a rivalry between the U.S. and the USSR, democracy and the free enterprise system versus dictatorship and communism. Eastern Europe made up Soviet satellite nations. The Marshall Plan, led by George Marshall, was put in place because of a need of vast new U.S. aid and self-help in the reconstruction after World War II. The U.S. policy of containment started after World War II. The U.S. threatened to use nuclear weapons during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Causes of the Cold War include development of the atomic bomb, mutual distrust and suspicion between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and conflicting political and economic ideologies. The Warsaw Pact nations were described as being behind the Iron Curtain after World War II. NATO was formed after World War II. During the Cold War, Europe was divided in half, with the democratic nations in the West and the communist nations in the East. This is a map of Western Europe, the countries who took Marshall Plan aid. This describes the policy of containment. This cartoon is about the Cuban Missile Crisis, the leader of the Soviet Union and JFK wrestling. This is a picture of the Berlin Wall, which was built in 1961 to separate East and West Berlin. This is a map showing the NATO versus Warsaw Pact countries during the Cold War. After the Chinese Civil War, Taiwan became a refuge for nationalists. In the 1950s, U.S. foreign policy decisions were the result of fears that communism would spread from China to Vietnam. Mao Zedong is most responsible for a communist revolution in China. There's still continuing conflict between the two Chinas. Communist China participated in the Korean conflict. In Vietnam, France wanted it back after World War II but lost. The communists, who were led by Ho Chi Minh, defeated the democracy in South Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is a united communist country. This is a map of Taiwan, where the nationalists live off the mainland of China. And the leader of the Nationalist Party, Chiang Kai-shek, who lost, and Mao Zedong, the leader of the communists, who won. Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union and Deng Xiaoping were both world leaders who believed in economic reform. Margaret Thatcher was the British Prime Minister who supported free trade, supported the military, and cooperated with the United States. This is a picture of Mikhail Gorbachev. His main ideas were called Glasnost and Perestroika. Deng Xiaoping, a leader of China, instituted the four modernizations. Margaret Thatcher was a great friend of the United States and a British Prime Minister. Indira Gandhi was the first female Indian Prime Minister and was allies with the Soviet Union. Independence movements. Great Britain ruled over India. It became independent because of the efforts of Mohandas Gandhi. The Indian National Congress pushed for independence. After independence, new nations were created: Pakistan, formerly West Pakistan, Bangladesh, formerly East Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, formerly Ceylon. There is political division along Hindi-Muslim lines. India is the world's largest democratic nation, and Mr. Nehru, a good friend of Gandhi, supported Western-style industrialization. Gandhi taught self-disobedience and led the movement for Indian independence from Great Britain. In Africa, the UN guaranteed colonial populations the right to self-determination, which led to African independence movements. Algeria, a northern country in Africa, achieved its independence through violent conflict. West Africa had peaceful transitions. Kenya had violent struggles under the leadership of Jomo Kenyatta. Nelson Mandela led a successful reform movement in South Africa and ended apartheid. This is a map of Algeria in northern Africa that at once was a colony of France. And this is a picture of Nelson Mandela, who was in jail for almost 30 years and helped end apartheid. The Holocaust, which was the worst episode of anti-Semitic persecution, led to increased support of the creation of a Jewish state known as Israel. Golda Meir was the first female prime minister of Israel. She led Israel to victory in the Yom Kippur War. In 2006, the Israeli population was 80% Jewish. Gamal Abdel Nasser was the president of Egypt. He nationalized the Suez Canal and had a strong relationship with the Soviet Union. This is a map of Israel that was carved out of the mandate called Palestine. This is Golda Meir, the first female Prime Minister of Israel, and Gamal Abdel Nasser, the President of Egypt. The Torah is the sacred writing of the Jews. Judaism had a large population of followers in Europe around 1500. Also, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism were all located in the Middle East. Islam will become a prominent religion in India because of the rule of the Mughals, but today India is primarily Hindu. Mecca and Medina are two cities in Southwest Asia that are sacred cities to the Muslims. Hindus believe in many forms of one God, in reincarnation, which is rebirth based upon karma. Karma means that all thoughts and actions result in future consequences. Buddhists believe in their founder Siddhartha Gautama, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path to Enlightenment. Buddhism spread from India to China because of Asoka's missionaries. Muslims follow the religion Islam, which is monotheistic belief in one God. They believe in Muhammad the Prophet. They read a holy book called the Quran. They follow the 5 pillars of Islam, and their sacred cities are Mecca and Medina. Christians are monotheistic, belief in one God. They believe Jesus was the Son of God, and they believe in life after death. They also read the New Testament in the Bible. Jews are also monotheistic, belief in one God. They read the 10 Commandments and also the Torah. You need to know the locations of these religions in modern day. Christianity is in Europe and the Americas, Judaism, North America and Israel, Islam, North Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Hinduism in India, and Buddhism in China. There are many contemporary world issues. Some challenges are refugees and guest workers. There are ethnic and religious conflicts in the Middle East, Northern Ireland, the Balkans, the Horn of Africa, and also South Asia. Some new technologies have immense impact on life. One that is controversial is called genetic engineering. Differences between the developing and developed nations are geographic locations, economic conditions, social conditions, population size, and also the rate of growth. Economic development and interdependence. In the contemporary world, the ability to conduct global business is made easy primarily because of instant communication. The creation of the International Monetary Fund, European Union, and World Trade Organization led to the expansion of economic interdependence. The growth of multinational corporations like Walmart, McDonald's, and Google has led to increased economic interdependence. The International Monetary Fund encourages international economic cooperation, stabilizes exchange rates, and provides loans to developing nations. This is a map of the European Union. The logo of the WTO, or World Trade Organization. This is a good graphic showing you global interdependence. This is the logo of the International Monetary Fund. This is the logo of NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Association between the US, Mexico, and Canada. This is a great logo that demonstrates economic interdependence. Our last topic is terrorism. A 20th century territorial conflict caused by religious differences was fought between the Arabs and the Israelis. New official counter-terrorism strategies led to heightened surveillance activities, which led to mounting concerns for personal privacy. In 1971, bombings in Northern Ireland, where IRA members detonated explosives in a public setting, involved a conflict between Catholics and Protestants. In 1972, there was the Munich Olympic massacre, and on 9/11/2001, Al-Qaeda flew planes into the Twin Towers in New York City, into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and also crashed a plane near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.